Joining me now, four of my favorite political analysts. Ron Christie, president of Christie Strategies, also former special assistant to President George W. Bush, former deputy assistant for domestic policy to Vice President Dick Cheney. New York bureau chief for the Washington Post, Keith Richburg, and Democratic strategist, CNN contributor Robert Zimmerman, and syndicated columnist and CNN contributor Miguel Perez. Good to have you all with us. Well, the president meeting with bipartisan lawmakers. Senator Harry Reid says everybody decided to give President Obama whatever he wants. That's encouraging, is it not?
Well, I think it is. I think it's very important, particularly looking at the war in Afghanistan, that the president has got to make sure, Lou, that he's making a very concerted effort to listen to the generals on the ground rather than some of the armchair generals that are sitting in the White House. And I think it's important that the congressional leadership come together to give the president the assets and the tools that he needs to win in Afghanistan. But at the same time, we need to keep this out of politics.
I have to ask a question, if I may. You said armchair generals in the White House. Is that a fix? Are those sort of fixed positions? I mean, were there those in the Bush administration as well, sitting there on the armchairs?
In the Bush administration,
there were none of those there.
In the Bush administration, hang on a second. In the Bush administration, I think it's very fair to say that the president really relied on his commanders in the field. He spoke with them constantly. President Obama has only spoken with McChrystal twice.
He got his 2 terms, Ron.
He got his 2 terms.
He got his 8 years, Ron. We're paying the price for it now. I would just be hesitant. I would just be hesitant to refer to an individual like National Security Advisor General Jim Jones as an armchair general. He has more combat time than any general in the military today.
Perhaps Ron was referring to Vice President Joe Biden, who seems to be the principal.
And Rahm Emanuel.
Well, you know, we have this process called a constitutional process and civilian control. And I think Vice President Biden's chairmanship of the Foreign Relations Committee during his tenure, and I think speaks to his credentials and his responsibility to speak on the issue.
I hate to break those two up, but I think, you know, just to throw it in here, you know, I think it's right that Obama's taking his time. And the input from the generals on the ground is important. On the other hand, it should not be the only input. Look, every general since the Holy Roman Empire has always wanted one thing: more troops. But it's up to the commander to say, hold on a second, you know, what is it you need these troops for? So you need to have a little check and balance on that.
I think he's taking too much time. This indecisiveness shows a lack of leadership that he's been showing over healthcare and other issues. The whole world is not going to respect us if we don't decide soon what we're going to do.
Can I just add on that? Wait, he just ordered 20,000 more troops. They're not there yet. Those 20,000 who were already ordered are still on the way, so there's no rush.
What's coming out of the White House is total indecisiveness. We don't know what we're going to do. Let us wait and think. I don't
think you send young men into war because commentators are saying, hurry up.
He's taking less time than George Bush took with the surge. And I think the point here is the fact that we have a strategy before we commit our soldiers into battle. We've made that mistake too many times in our history.
But our commanders on the field already have a strategy. They're telling the president what needs to be done.
And the chairman, and Admiral Mullins of the Joint Chiefs, as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff?
Robert, here's the difference. I think the difference we've seen here is that the president came out in March and articulated a strategy and said, having the Taliban in place, that it's irresponsible, we have to root the Taliban out. The president came out in August, said the same thing. We cannot have the Taliban in Afghanistan. Now the president's saying, wait a second, let's sit back and think. He's clearly articulated a strategy not once but twice this year about rooting out the Taliban. Now he seems reluctant. I think that gives a very strong sense around the world that the United States is not serious about winning war.
The message is we can live with the Taliban.
No, exactly. Excuse me, I hate to throw a couple of facts in here and kill a good spin, but the reality is you're asking our government, and our government's being asked to create an Afghanistani army of 400,000 police and military. In the history of Afghanistan, that has never been done. The most they've ever had is 80,000. We need a government in Afghanistan that's a credible partner.
You've addressed all but one element of this, which has been ruled out by this White House.
Right.
And that is the option to withdraw from Afghanistan and to draw down our troops. We are 8 years into this conflict.
Yeah, that's right.
8 years. We don't have a strategy. We don't have an exit strategy. We don't have a clearly defined mission. And we have an administration, like the administration before it, which has been rather opaque in what its goals were. Why would we sign up for another 8 years of anything in Afghanistan, and why should we, when the leadership of our general staff has not demonstrated, certainly on the ground in terms of results or accomplishment or success, that they're worthy of the men and women that we are putting in harm's way in uniform for this country?
As long as there's a September 11 on the calendar, we have to worry about the Taliban coming back and doing. I mean, look, they're in Pakistan. They're on the other side of the border. Even if they're weakened in Afghanistan, they're going to come back and hit us again.
I understand full well who the enemy is. I don't understand what we're doing about the enemy and what we've done for 8 years.
Lou, you're speaking exactly to the critical issue here, and that is the role. Our goal is to defeat the Taliban. Our goal is to destroy Al Qaeda. So, as has been articulated, the issue is, can we do it effectively? What strategy can we pursue? And that's what these meetings are all about, and why they're so critical. Because I don't know that we can accomplish this without a government on the ground.
I'm in no way. Please don't misunderstand. I'm not criticizing the fact there are meetings. I am not criticizing there's thinking. I am applauding thinking. I'm applauding meetings. I applaud analysis. It is ruling out one course that seems to be eminently viable and perhaps even appropriate and preferred that has been taken off the table by this White House.
It's right. Let me just say this. We need to have a clear, demonstrable recognition of how do we define success? How do we define a success for our troops moving forward that, but for the following actions, they're going to stay, and if they don't accomplish the job, they're going to leave. I think it's very critical when one American soldier loses their life for an undefined policy as it relates to the military objectives. I think that is a tragic loss of life. That's what this administration has to do, Lou, is define what is success. If we haven't met those benchmarks, we need to move our troops home.
May I remind you that it was 1 year ago this very day that it had been almost 7 years of U.S. involvement in Afghanistan under President George W. Bush. I don't understand why any of the priorities or considerations should change one president to the other.
And they shouldn't.
I'll tell you why they should change. Because we're dealing with the Karzai government, which has just been elected in a fraudulent re-election. So therefore, the real issue is, do we have a partner, do we have a government that the people will support? If we don't, it makes nation building very difficult and very threatening.
Miguel, you get the last word.
Absolutely, I agree with that. Look, nation building should be our goal. The Russians tried to control Afghanistan. They proved that it cannot be done. Obviously, we cannot conquer Afghanistan, but we definitely can do something about controlling the Taliban from taking power again.
Yeah, I was there 8 years ago. I went back several times to Afghanistan. The one thing that happened, I think, and this is what the soldiers on the ground I was embedded with said as late as 2004, we took our eye off the ball because we were distracted by Iraq. That's what happened.
And God knows what would be said now. Thank you very much, Keith. Appreciate it. Miguel, thank you. Robert, as always. Ron, as always.
Lou?
Up at the top of the hour, Campbell Brown. Campbell,